Alright, so we have our main layout here for the bot. Again, it's very generic, but we're not going to really delve into anything too complicated this time. It's just more of a quick rundown. One thing we didn't go over last time is the stop button here. Obviously, there's no real need to show it if the bot's not running, so we're going to set this to not visible to start with. Alright, and now we need to fill out the functions for the stop and start buttons. So we'll go ahead and we'll just double click start, which will add in the function for the button start click event, and double click stop, which will add in the function for the stop click event, or the click event for the stop button. There are a couple things we need to add as far as global variables here. We want to keep track of if the bot is running or if we should stop it. So we'll just do a private bool stop bot equals false as the default value. We're going to want to hold a list of strings for the emails and a list of strings for the proxies. So we'll do private list string emails equals new list. Now some of the things you see me do here may not work exactly the same in your .NET copy, and that's because I use a add-on called ReSharper, which is pretty awesome for the new programmer. It kind of tells you when you mess up nomenclature or the syntax of stuff, and auto fills in keywords that it can predict. For instance, if I was to change this proxies to proxies, it will underline it, and I can click there and it will tell me here that the typical syntax for a private global variable is going to start with an underscore and be in lowercase. So I can click there to change that. It's an awesome tool. It teaches you good fundamental programming techniques that are more in line with what most people do, or what the standard model, accepted model is. So that's pretty cool. If you get heavily into programming, I do recommend it. But for now, just be aware that things may underline that aren't actually wrong. But because the way I use the syntax, ReSharper may bitch at me about it. So we have the stop bot, which that Boolean is going to control whether or not the bot should stop botting. We have a list of strings which will contain all of our email addresses, and a list of strings that will contain all of our proxy addresses. The next thing we need to keep track of is a submit count and an error count. So we'll do a private int count submit, and it of course will start off at 0, and then private int count error, and that will start off at 0 as well. Alright, so for the start button click event, the first thing we want to do is make sure that the stop bot Boolean is set to false, because we don't want it to be set to true when we're just starting the bot. And then when we click it, we want to make sure that the stop button is visible. So if we do want to stop it, we can. Next thing we want to do is make sure that we have at least one email address and one proxy address in both of our lists. So we'll do a if tb email list dot lines dot count, because we should only have one email address per line, is greater than 0, and also tb proxy list dot lines dot count is greater than 0. Then we want to go ahead and start botting, so we'll make a function called start botting. Simple enough. We do want to add in an else here, and we'll just say message box dot show you must at least provide one email address and proxy address to start. And for those of you that are used to VB, of course, semicolon dictates the end of a command. You have to have the brackets almost in every function, or if-then statement, while statement, etc. It's just syntax, so get used to it. Alright, so we've got that, and we'll worry about start botting here in a second. We'll just come down to the stop click events, and when we stop the bot, we want to first make sure the stop button is no longer visible because we don't need it. Then we want to make sure the stop bot boolean is set to true, and we want to update the status box here, which I forgot to rename, so we'll rename that really quick here. TB status window. Good enough. Come back to the code, and after we click the stop button, we want to update the status window. Text equals whatever is currently in the status window, so we'll say it equals its status window's text plus environment new line, so it creates a new line, and we'll say stopping bot. That way it notifies in that text box that the bot is indeed stopping. You'll see that here, like I said, the blue underline, there's nothing wrong with this, but it's going to tell me that it's a localizable string, and the proper way of doing this is putting an @ symbol before it, so that it knows that you want that to be spit out exactly as it shows. Never had a problem with it not, but the proper way is putting the @ symbol there. It's not a big deal. You can do it either way. Alright, so after we add in stopping bot, we want to make sure this text box, the status window, is actually on the last line of text, because as we add text, of course, it's going to go past that scroll bar, and we want to make sure the scroll bar is actually at the very bottom. So we'll do text box status window, selection, start is equal to tb status window dot text, or text length, text dot length. We'll do that. So what that says is it's going to put the caret at the very end of however much text is in that box. And I want to say tb status window dot, and then we'll scroll to the actual caret itself, right? Yeah, there we go. One problem you might run into here is that if you run the bot for a really long time, the amount of text in the text box might go over the amount of text we allotted. We'll deal with that later on, but for now we're just going through the basics here. So we have the main event for the start button, we have the main event for the stop button, we have a couple global variables up here, and then we have this function that doesn't exist yet, start botting. So let's make that function, which that'll be private void start botting, and we'll want to go ahead and when the bot first starts botting, we'll want to reset the counters, which the counters are the error count and the submit count. So we'll do count errors equals 0 and count submit equals 0. And then we'll want to reset the status window, so anything that was in there before will be removed. I want to set the submit count text equals submits 0, LDL errors text errors 0, and what the hell, we'll even do the proxy. Cur proxy.text equals proxy. That way, say we are running the bot for a while, we stop it and want to start it back up. This will make sure that the counters and all the labels are defaulted back to what they were originally. The next thing we want to do is reinitialize the email and proxy lists. So if there were emails or proxies in that list from a previous start-stop, that we clear those out, because we'll have to rebuild those in here in a second. So initialize the two lists. This also will remove any old entries. We'll say these are the global variables we set up earlier, so emails equals new list, and that basically will clear out anything that was in there before and make sure it's initialized. Same thing with proxies. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to go through every single line in the email list text box and add each line to the email list. So we'll do a for each loop here. Do loop through all the emails in the email text box and add to the list. So for each loop, we'll do string email in the text box email list dot lines. Drink here. Alright, so I want to reference the global variable of emails dot add, and we're going to add that string email. Right? So what this will do is it'll loop through every single line in the text box email list and add each line to the email's string list that is declared up here. And then we want to do the same thing for the proxy list. So loop through all the proxies in the proxy text box and add to the list. Now you could technically just rely on the text box and loop through that as you're doing the actual entries. The reason I do it this way is because as we submit an entry to the instant win game, I want to remove that line from the text box to give the user a visual representation of the different email addresses that we've already used, so that if they do stop it and they start it up again, it's not going to use the email accounts that have already been used. So at this point, I want to do the proxies, which for each string proxy in tb proxy list dot lines dot lines. I don't know what the hell the layout engine is. We'll add proxy to the dot add proxy, and you'll see here too that like it adds the brackets for me automatically. Typically you won't get that, but because of ReSharper, it knows that if it adds one, it has to add the other one, the closing one as well, which is nice. There's a lot of stuff to ReSharper that really makes things a lot easier when you're programming. I definitely recommend it. Alright, so now that we've looped through all of the lines in the email list text box and the proxy list text box and add those to an in-memory string list, we'll want to make one more list of emails, and we'll call this the temp email list. Now the reason we do this is because as we remove emails from the list, if we're looping through it, it won't let you loop through an email list and remove entries from that list as you're looping through it. And this is important because we want to update the text box email list with the current list of emails that haven't been used. So we have to add that second list here. You'll see how this works out in a second. So next we want to do for each. Don't pay any attention to that. For each string, say for each string email in our email list, which is the underscore emails, we'll give the chance for the bot to catch up. So give bot a chance to catch up. It just allows it to process any like visual keys that need to be shown up. This isn't needed. It's not recommended in most cases, but because we're not doing threading and all that, jazz, we'll want to make sure it gives the bot a chance to process any current actions that need to be processed, such as you pressing the stop button, things like that. Then we'll want to make sure the stop bot flag is not true. And if it is true, break out of this for loop. So we'll say the stop bot flag is true, break out of botting loop. If stop bot equals true, break. And what this does is say, it's going through this loop right here, which will be our botting loop, and somebody clicks the stop button. Once it tries to use the next email address, it'll check that flag, it'll see it's true, and it will break out of this loop and stop the bot. That's important because if you don't have that, it'll just keep on botting. And that's pretty important there. Okay. What to do. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is, because we're in this for each loop, string email, we want to give a visual representation of what email address we're on, so we're going to set the text box current email.text to the email address we're on in this loop. And then we want to get a proxy address from the proxy list. So we'll say string list prxy equals the first proxy in that list dot splits, and we're going to split that at the colon because you need the IP and the port, of course. So there should always be that colon, right? Right. But we all know people that don't include complete proxy addresses. So we'll want to make sure the length of that string array should be 2, because you're going to have the IP and you're going to have the port. So we'll do a while loop here. While proxy dot length does not equal 2, we'll want to remove that top one, because that's what we're on, is the 0. And then we'll want to do tb proxy list dot text is equal to what's ever left in the I gotta do string join environment new line proxies. So what's going on here is while the proxy.length is not equal to 2, we're going to remove that top proxy entry and then update the proxy list text box with the new list of proxies with that one removed. And then for each one in the entry, we'll put an environment new line in between, which makes us get that nice list again. After which, we want to try the next proxy in the list. So proxy equals proxies 0, because we're back to the top one again. Once you remove 0, what was 1 is now 0. So boom. Then it will check it again. Is that proxy list 2? If not, keeps doing it over and over again until it finally hits one that has the proper syntax, which would be IP:port. At that point, we can go ahead and say string proxy IP is equal to prxy dot trim. We use trim here to make sure that there's no leading or trailing spaces that may have got entered. We don't need the spaces, we just need the string between. And then we do string proxy port, which of course is the second part of that array dot trim. And after we've gotten the proxy IP and port to use, we'll go ahead and we'll remove that proxy from the list because we don't need it anymore. Even if it works, it doesn't work, whatever, we're not going to use it again. And then we'll update the proxy list again. Text is equal to string.join. You'll see here it's string separator is the first part, and then the values you want to put in there. So we'll do join. The separator we want between each value is an environment new line, and the values we want it to pull from is proxies. And then after that, we'll want to have it submit the entries. Submit entry, and we'll need to pass it the proxy IP and the proxy port. Everything else is on the main form. Of course, that function doesn't exist yet. We'll get to that in a second. But then after the submission is complete, we'll want to remove the email address from our temporary email list, and then update the text box email list with the new list of emails that haven't been used yet. There we go. That's the whole process. It basically grabs one email address, gives the program a chance to do whatever it has to do. If it has to move the bot or look for the stop button click, etc., etc. Checks to make sure the stop button wasn't clicked. If it was, then it stops the whole process. If not, it continues. Updates to the current email text box with the email address of the one that's currently in the loop. Tries to grab a valid proxy address. Makes sure that proxy address is valid. Once we verify the proxy address is valid, then we store a proxy IP and a proxy port string from that proxy address. Remove that proxy from the master list, and then update the text box proxy list with the new list of unused proxies. After which, we're going to go ahead and try and submit an entry using that proxy. And after that submission is complete, no matter what happens, we want it to remove this email address from the temp email, which is the 01, and then update the list. So if we stop the bot, we still have a list of valid email addresses to use. So the next step here would be to create the submit entry function. So we'll do private void submit entry, and we pass the string of the proxy IP, string of the proxy port. There we go. And this is where the fun gets underway. This goes back to the whole fiddler layout of all the information we need to pass to this bot. Fortunately enough, the bot doesn't really require us to look at the response. It just requires that we post this information to the web server. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set a timeout. So when we go to post, if the post takes longer than this, it just moves on and does whatever. Timeout. You can do this in the form, but we're going to hard code it. We'll say that the timeout's going to be 15 seconds. Well, timeout is calculated by milliseconds, so 15 seconds is actually 15 times 1,000. Now I could say 15,000 here, but I like doing 15 times 1,000 because it reminds me that it's 15 seconds, not 15,000 seconds or minutes or whatever. It's just easier for me to visualize that when I go back through and look at the code. Then we want to store, what we need here. So the next thing we need to do is set up the web request. So create web request. This is going to be an HTTP web request. We'll call it rec equals web request dot create, and we're going to make the web request to the page we're posting to, which in this case is post sweepstakes preview data submit.aspx, right? And it's posting to https://www.qbsocial.com, which you can tell by the host here. That's why it doesn't show it in the post. So we'll take copy value, get rid of this ending section, add in the post value, which is this. It's very important to pay attention to the HTTP or HTTPS. If you try to do a post to an HTTP when it's supposed to be an HTTPS, you're going to have problems, and typically that problem isn't very apparent. You'll think you're posting the information wrong or something else is going off crazy, and you'll spend a good hour or two before you finally realize it. So make sure you're posting to either a secure or non-secure page, depending on the promo that you're buying. And I'm almost out of alcohol, so we'll see what happens there. Alright, so we got the request, blah, 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 blah. There's your web request. Now, after we create the web request, we'll want to add some properties to it. These properties will differ from promo to promo, but some of the default ones that will be the same will be that timeout I said. So we'll set the timeout to the timeout we created. Just make sure if it goes over that many seconds that it just kills it and continues on. We don't want it sitting there for fucking 5 minutes, excuse my language, waiting for response. And then we can also do a request read-write timeout, which typically you don't need, but we're going to add it in anyhow, as it doesn't hurt anything. Then at that point, we'll want to know what kind of method we're using. Method. Go back to this, and it's going to be a post method. So we want to use post, not get, post. And that'll differ between promo to promo, page to page, etc. But here we'll use post. Post. Okay, and then content type is usually required. In most cases, this is application / x www form URL encoded. You can go here and look at the content type they have here, and you'll see it's there, just what I entered. And then accept, which again is accept star dash star or star slash star, sorry. So star slash star, and the user agent. Now what the user agent does is it tells the server what browser you were using when you did this request. So this can vary depending on what browser you use, or you can set it to a static one. I typically have about 6 or 7 different user agents I use, and I have it rotate through that kind of stuff. But for something this simple, you can use any user agent you want. In this case, we'll just go ahead, we'll copy what we have here for a value. So you find the user agent, you right click, choose copy value only. We can come back to the tutorial and just pop that right in there, right? So whenever it does the request, it's going to look like Mozilla /5.0 compatible blah blah blah. There we go. Which in this case was actually IE some freaking model, I don't know. Don't know why it pops up as Mozilla, but it does. And then we want to check out the refer. This tells the server, who referred them to this link that you're going to. Typically, it's okay to just copy whatever value is in the Fiddler results, and then of course the host. Sometimes you don't need the refer or the host. Most times I try to include it. Unless I'm having issues, then I play around to see if it works or not. It's hit or miss. Some require it, some don't. Some you can just leave it out. If you do add it, it screws it up. I don't know. Alright, so that right there is pretty typical of what you need to send them as far as the HTTP web request values. It can change depending on what you're doing, but that's the gist of it right there. And there's a host of different things you can add in. And again, some you do have to play with. Some will work with that. Except encoding is required in some. It's not in this one. Just keep that in mind. Alright, so after that we want to, what do we want to do? Let's deal with the proxy. Alright, so at this point we've got the request and all the values it needs to actually send the request through. But there is another value called proxy. And this right here will set the proxy IP to use when making this request. And that's important because, who wants to show them their real IP? And there's ways around this other than using proxies. You can use a VPN, things of that nature, but this really simplifies the process. So what we'll do is, the first thing we want to do is update the if the proxy IP and proxy ports are not blank, use the proxy. We'll want to update the label of the proxy, right? So lbl cur proxy.text is equal to proxy. We'll just clear out whatever was there to begin with. And now we'll say if the proxy IP does not dot string dot is null or empty. There we go. Proxy IP. And the proxy port, string dot proxy string dot is null or empty proxy port. So basically this is saying as long as the proxy IP string and the proxy port string are not null or empty, we're going to do whatever in this bracket here. And the first thing we want to do is we want to update the status window. Say status.window.text equals whatever is currently there. So text plus we'll add a new line plus, and we'll say using proxy proxy IP plus proxy port. So basically, if it's the proxy IP and proxy port aren't empty, we'll update the status window to say that we're going to use a proxy port and proxy IP. After which point we want to make sure we set the selection caret to the very end of the status window. Text.length, and we'll scroll to that TB status. Scroll to caret. Haha. We're also going to update the proxy label to display this proxy IP. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and give the bot a chance to process all this as far as visually. Give it a second to unfreeze and display all this information. Again, application.doEvents isn't needed if you're doing threading, but that's a whole different subject that we'll get into later on in some other video. So at this point, we have all the information we need to set the proxy of this HTTP web request. So we'll do request.proxy is equal to a new web proxy, and it wants to know the URI address, which is the proxy IP, and it wants to know the port, which is going to be the proxy port. But because the proxy port is currently in the string value, we have to convert it to an int. So we'll do convert.int32 proxy port. Haha, there we go. Alright, so this right here, people, is your golden area for the proxy. I know a lot of people have asked about it. How do you set a proxy up to a web request? Well, it's as simple as that. I mean, honestly, you don't need any of this crap right here. You just got to make sure you have a valid proxy IP and a port, and then add this to your request, and wham bam, thank you ma'am, away you go. Not the case with web browser requests, but that's why we don't use those. They require access to IE and all other kinds of crap that if you can avoid, you're better off. Alright, so now that we're dealing with the web request, we have all of the default values set up, we have the proxy set up, and now we need to make sure we can pass the variables that they want, all these variables right here. How do we do this? Well, you can go through and you can build it out yourself into a string like this, which works, but it's not the most elegant way to do it. It's really hard to read, debug, etc., etc. I prefer not to do it that way if possible. So we're going to work with something called name value collections. They're great because they make the code a lot more readable later on. So we're going to start here with get variables for request. So we'll do a new variable, which will be a name value collection variable, and we'll just say it's PAR for parameter, and new initialize it. So there we go, and then we'll go through and build out all of these parameters right here. Alright, so we'll say PAR control list is equal to, let's blank that out for now, and we'll copy this. Copy. Come back over here, copy this value to here, and do that for the rest. Now, while I'm doing this, there's one other thing to keep in mind. Doing it this way or doing it via just a string value, as I showed you a second ago, whenever you deal with any kind of like special character, you have to make sure that you encode it so that it's web compliant, because if you add like certain slashes, @ symbols, crap like that, like a plus, a slash, and an equal, I think are the three major ones here. If you add those to a string or they're in a string, it'll jack things up. It's because the web server doesn't know how to interpret that. They're actually considered special characters, so you have to use the HTML equivalent of those characters to make sure they don't get read wrong. We'll go over that here in a second. Am I drunk enough yet? In fact, I am not. Let me get another drink. I'll be right back. Alright, we're back. Oh yeah, so encoding. You want to make sure that you encode whatever text you're going to send to it. So in this case, anything we put in these values here, we want to make sure that's encoded. I mean, technically, you only have to encode it if it includes one of those special characters, but get in the habits of encoding no matter what. It'll save you hassle later on. So we're going to make a function. It's going to return a string, and we're just going to call it encode. And we'll say string str. This function will do is it's going to make sure that if the string is not null, str does not equal null. In fact, you can do if string dot is null or empty, str. If not, we'll take it and we'll say str equals str dot replace, and we'll replace any instance of a plus symbol with the HTML equivalent, which is %2b. str equals str replace every instance of a / with a %2f. This is going to be great. I know some people that are never going to let me live this down, but what the hell. And a percent equal, or not percent equal, but an equal sign with percent 3D. There we go. Those are the three main ones. So anytime that string has a plus, forward slash, or equal sign, we're going to replace it with the HTML equivalent, or whatever the hell you want to call it, so that when it passes it to the server doesn't misinterpret it and then bitch at us about information being wrong. And we'll tell it to return this new string. And we'll say else, if it was null or empty, just go ahead and return empty. Boom. What the hell? Oh. Aha. Return that. Right? Right. Alright, so now we come back up here and let me start filling these values out. So control list. Control list is this crap text box here, which, oh come on. Control list, yep, okay, text. So copy the value there. This doesn't change, so we'll do that. And like I said, there's nothing here that really requires the encode, but I'm going to include it anyhow, just to get in the habit of including it. There we go, encode. Next one is the campaign application ID, which is 232. Let's say encode. Come on, 232. Add campaign is 95. So encode 95. Source src is blank. And even the blank ones I'm going to do the encode on, because get in the habit, it will save you tons of time later on. And then 2371 is the first name, so we'll do encode tb first name dot text. This one's probably going to be the last name, so encode tb last name dot text. And it was 7172. 717. Come on, really? 7172 last name. 73 is a zip. 74 is the phone number. 73 is 36. What the hell? 364 is the email address. Okay. Code tb email list dot text. tb cur email dot text. There we go. 73. 73 is the zip. So encode tb zip dot text. Again, almost all of these don't require this encoding, but I'm including it just in case. Now 74 is different because it's our phone number, but as I had before, we have the area code and the rest of the phone are split up. And the result here wants it all together. So we're just going to go ahead and do encode tb phone area dot text plus tb phone 7-digit dot text. And just combine them together. And the checkbox is just a no. It's basically telling them no, you don't want any more spam email. Leave me the hell alone. That's it. There's all of your name value collections that you need to include with the post. That's great. Well, how do you get that translated into the post data, right? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build that string out. You know how I told you could just do it via a string yourself and not go through all this crap? Well, we still have to build it out, but at least now if you have to modify it, it's all right here and really easy to modify. So we'll do post data equals blank value, not date data, thank you. And then we're going to go through the parameter values. We'll make sure that if par is not null. We're going to loop through each one, so for each string key, we'll call it key, in par.keys, post data plus equals key plus equals par get key plus. Now you see by doing this here, so it goes through each one of these and it says, alright, post data plus, we're going to add the key, and then it's going to say equals par key, par.get key. So it's going to add this, and then it's going to get the actual value, which is going to translate back into this crap here. Again, you could have built it out this way in the first place, but I feel this is a lot more beneficial. It's easier to read. You can tell what's going on. All the values are right there. Boom, boom, thank you, ma'am. Alright, so after that's all done, the last thing we want to do is get rid of that last and symbol. So we'll do post data equals post data dot trim end, and trim off that last and symbol. Don't need it. Don't want it. Done. What next? Next we have to see how long the request data we're sending, because if you come back here you'll see when you send a post data request it wants to know the content length. So we have to figure out a way to provide that content length to the server. So we're going to do a byte array. We'll call it request data. And we'll encode it. Encoding .utf8 get bytes, and we'll get the bytes from that post data string we just made. And we're going to say rec.content length is equal to request data.length, because that's what we're sending to the server. Boom. Now all we have to do is start the whole process of getting the request string and sending the data and getting the response. So we'll do a try. Typically I have to type this all out. Try catch blah blah exception ex blah blah blah. Okay, so try. That's part of reCAPTCHA doing it all for me. Thank you. Alright, so we want to get the request stream, right? So get the request stream using stream and the reason I use a using function here is so anything inside of these brackets have access to the data stream. Once you get outside this bracket, it automatically closes that connection out, so I don't have to worry about memory leaks and crap like that. It's all handled internally. It's a lot sleeker, not as much code. Get used to using the using nomenclature, syntax, whatever the hell you want to call it at this point, because I don't care. So we're going to do write data to the request stream. Data stream write, and we're going to write that byte array we created which is the request data, and we're going to say the offset is 0 because there's nothing before it, and then we're going to say the length of it is the request data dot length. So we want to send all of the request data to the data stream starting at 0 and all the way through. Very important. So this right here writes to the data stream, at which point we're going to need something to hold the response from the server. So response equals nothing right now, and now we want to get the response. Get the response. Using, again, we use using here so that it closes the connection out afterwards. HTTP web requests response, because it's a response. Web response. Response equals HTTP web response. That get response. Aha. And then we want to get the response stream. So using stream data stream, we'll name it, equals response dot get response stream. And then we want to read that response stream to the end. So we need a stream reader. So we'll do using stream reader SR equals new stream reader response dot get response stream. That doesn't seem right. That's right. Okay, so response equals sr dot read to end. So there we go. Basically reads the whole response stream to the end. At which point we can now check to see what is in the response. And we'll need something to check for if response dot contains something, then this is a valid entry. Else something went wrong. Then any exceptions or errors we catch, we want to add it to the error count. And we want to make sure that the error is displayed in the status window, so that if somebody does have a problem, they can give you some kind of error message that you can look up later on. DB status window dot selection start again equals DB status window dot text dot length, DB status window dot scroll to carets, and then LB errors text equals errors, and you want to update that with the current error count. So count error dot toString. Now we still have to look at the valid entry and the something went wrong, right? So if we come back here, remember how before it went to some other random page? We'll want to find something on that random page to look for to make sure that entry was valid. Well, the best way to do that is to come over here, put a pause after you actually hit the request stream, and look at what is in the RESP string value. So we'll start her up. We'll say this is Bill Wapner 90210. What the hell? 704 553 1385. And then we'll want to add an email list to this. And then we'll add a proxy list. And hit the start button. See what happens. If all goes well, it should at least try to submit and get to this point and stop. Boom. Stopped right here. Look at that. And there's our response. Highlight right over it and check it out. Get a text view of it. And by running the promo earlier, I know if the response starts with 1, it's submitted successfully. Strangely enough, you can submit using the same email address over and over again with this bot. I don't know why, but you can, or the promo rather. So we can just tell it if the response contains, or actually starts with, I can't fucking spell, 1, then we know this is a valid entry. And if that's the case, we want to go ahead and update the status window and say tb status window dot text plus environment dot newline equals or plus entry for tb current email dot text plus submitted. So this will add the text to the status window saying that entry for the email address submitted. Very short, simple. We want to make sure that we set the selection start to the length of the text box. And we scroll that caret. Again, an issue you might have is that after a while, after somebody submits, the text box may become too full. We can go over that later on, but it's 3 a.m. I'm trying to get to bed here. So we'll add a submit counter. Basically, when we do underscore count submit plus plus, it takes whatever this value is and adds 1 to it. And then we'll update the label of submits to display this new counter value. Count submit dot toString. Boom. Then we want to do something similar for the any other value. So we'll do count error plus plus, and let's do LBL errors text errors. What this will do is if the page response doesn't start with a 1, it will add an error counter to this toString, although it won't differentiate between an error here or an actual exception. So we'll add text to the status window, and we'll say this text is plus unknown error. That way we know this is an unknown error, and we should probably check this code. So we can take this off, put a stopper here in case it ever hits it, and then we'll do the same thing with the whole selection start text dot length. And there's ways of adding functions so that we don't have to retype this same code over and over again, but for the simplicity of things and keeping the functions down to a minimum, we're just going to type it in over and over again, so you guys don't have to